Hello everyone, thanks very much for joining us for this second free practice session of the weekend here at the Hockenheimring, the final weekend of the 2020 DTM season. We're into mid-November. We're here around about a month later than we normally would be, but so far this weekend blessed with sunshine, blue skies, barely a cloud up there, cool but not very cold conditions, and a championship which looks like it's going to go right down to the wire. We had a 45-minute free practice session earlier on this afternoon. This is going to be slightly shorter as ever at 30 minutes, and the cars are getting ready to head out in about 4 minutes time for the start of the session. I'm Chris Hartley. I'll talk you through this free practice session and all the action to come over the course of the weekend here at Hockenheim. My commentary box overlooks the start-finish line, and on the other side of that I can see the cars starting to nose out of the garages now, getting ready for this session. So Mike Rockenfeller was the driver that set the fastest time of the first practice session this morning, and Rocky had a very good long run pace as well. I've done a bit of analysis of the lap times for the longer runs. Most of the drivers set around about 15 to 16 laps during their long runs, but through the first part of the both of the free practice sessions are expected to go for a couple, 2 or 3 hot laps in qualifying trim. And in both conditions, both short run and long run pace, Mike Rockenfeller looked very strong indeed for Audi Sport Team Phoenix, looking for his first win here at Hockenheim this weekend, and looking for his first win of the season. Mike set a time of 1 minute 29.594 seconds. That was 0.14 seconds quicker than René Rast, the championship leading. He's just going out now to the end of the pit lane, and there behind him the two drivers that could mathematically still take the title away from him. Number 4 Robin Freins, number 51 second in the championship, having led the championship all the way through to Zolder last time out. It's Nico Muller. So René Rast was second quickest behind Mike Rockenfeller, a time of 1 minute 29.738. Then it gets very tight because he was only 13 thousandths of a second quicker than Ferdinand Habsburg, who continues his excellent run of form, having picked up his first podium, first pole position as well at Zolder. And the Austrian set a time of 1:29.751, and he was only 6 thousandths of a second quicker than Jamie Green, who looked incredibly quick this morning, or this afternoon rather, in the first free practice session. He was 4th quickest overall. He was only a gnats away from being second quickest, and he had a very good long run as well, more about which I'll tell you about when we get to that particular part of this free practice session. So Jamie Green 4th quickest, and might he play a part in this as well. I talked in the first free practice session about the fact that 2 of the 3 drivers going for the championship are teammates, but Robin Freins has only an outside chance. He's 41 points adrift. There are a maximum of 56 points still available, 25 for each race win, and 3 points available if you get pole position for each of the qualifying sessions. So he's still got a chance, and I wouldn't rule him out completely, but it could be that as the weekend goes on, he might have to play a teammate role to this man, to Nico Muller, for Team Abt Sportsline, to try and help them to not only the team's championship, which they've already won, but the drivers' championship as well. So talked about that, but of course Jamie Green is the teammate to René Rast, and it's going to be nothing but beneficial for René to have his teammate up there somewhere near the sharp end of the grid and the sharp end of the races, because obviously Jamie can't win the championship, but he could help René Rast and the team to defend their drivers' championship title from last year. So Jamie Green was 4th quickest. Loic Duval, who was replaced by Benoit Trullier at the second weekend at Zolder because he was out racing in the States. He's back, and Loic, the former Le Mans winner, was 5th quickest, and good long run pace for him as well. His best time in the session was 1:29.810, so he's only 3/10 of a second away from the fastest time of the session. Nico Muller was 6th, but again, long run pace was good. His best time was a 1:29.947, so about 4/10 of a second away from Mike Rockenfeller's best. Timo Glock was 7th this afternoon. Harrison Newey up there again in 8th place. Fabio Scherer, who picked up a couple of excellent 5th place finishes at Zolder over the previous 2 weekends, he was 9th quickest for WRT. teammate to Harrison Newey. Sheldon van der Linde was 10th, Jonathan Aberdeen was 11th, Marco Wittmann was 12th. Struggled in the first part of the session, but actually looked much stronger in the second part of the session as the cars go out for this 30-minute free practice too. And then we had Robert Kubica 13th, Robin Freins back in 14th place. Now, he struggled for, well, from the radio transmissions we heard, just struggling to understand exactly what was wrong with the car. He couldn't pinpoint it. He was looking for the data. It looked like he made a bit of a step forwards in the long run, but he still struggled compared to his two championship rivals for pace on the long run as well in free practice 1. So Robin with work to do here. Philip Eng was 15th, saw him having quite a few lockups and getting a bit frustrated on the radio in free practice 1. And Lucas Auer really did struggle for pace, both in terms of short run and long run pace. So he was 16th. Remember, he's been one of the winners this year, Lucas Auer. And only a few years ago, he was a championship contender. Coming back to DTM this year with BMW, having previously raced for Mercedes.
Okay, the car in front is Lucas Auer, and Timo is behind us, leaving the garage now.
And there Robert Kubica giving the information about who he's where on the track. Now, I talked about this, it might only be today that this is an issue, but I talked about this earlier this afternoon, the low sun that you get in the winter during late afternoon. Look at that from the camera. Now, the eyes can adjust a little bit quicker than a camera lens can, but it's still, through certain corners, I think going to be an issue, the low sun. You can see that coming into the arena section through the entry to Motordrome through the right-hander. They're right into the sun at the end of that short back straight. Now, of course, the races, as ever, are going to start just after 1:30 in the afternoon on Saturday and Sunday, so we'll be done. Everything will be completed by 3 o'clock. This is the latest that the cars will be on track during the course of the weekend. So I don't think it'll be too much of an issue, the low sun during the races, but it definitely might be an issue in this second free practice session, because obviously it's pretty much the end of the day now. The light is starting to fade. It's also potentially going to be much cooler in terms of the track temperature than they will get when we get to race conditions tomorrow. So this first part of this 30-minute free practice session should, if it follows the normal pattern, be about trying to bang in a couple of quick lap times and have a qualifying type run. Then they'll come in, have a reset, check the data, reset the cars, go out. So they won't be able to do as long a run as they did in the first free practice session. They should be able to still get 8-9 laps in the second part of the session. So we're here at Hockenheim. First time we've been here since the final weekend of last season. So it's actually more than 12 months since the DTM drivers and teams were here at the circuit. There you see one of the critical braking points on the circuit, the run into the hairpin, which they enter at about 295 kilometres an hour and have to slow the cars down to just 55 kilometres an hour in first gear. There's Jamie Green then, looking very strong in the first free practice session. What's been largely a very frustrating year for a driver that has multiple times challenged for the championship, never quite won it. He was second in the championship in 2015. He was third in the championship in 2012, in 2016 and 2017, which I'd argue was probably the closest he got to the championship. Even though he wasn't second, he was third, and he only missed out by 6 points in the end. Some team orders coming into play that year as well. Robin Freins looking for his first DTM title. I mean, come what may this season, I mean, he's only been in it for 3 years, but Robin Freins, this is going to be his most competitive season so far in DTM. Maybe a little bit of history to be made as well at this event this weekend, not just in terms of the championship, but I'm looking at it being the final chapter in Class 1, these magnificently quick DTM cars that we have before we move to GT3 type cars next year. Who would not like the chance to become the final winner in this era of DTM? That might be something that some of the drivers are looking for. So René Rast, who has continued to move up the all-time rankings in terms of number of wins, number of podiums, number of pole positions that he's managed to secure. 6 times he has been a winner this year, and he might even be able to beat his own records, his own previous record of 7 wins in a season, which is the second most anybody's won in a season. Let's see how he gets on. So target time, if they can go as quickly as they did in what were slightly warmer conditions in the beginning of the afternoon. 129.594, and that's a pretty good first roll of the dice from René Rast to 129.803. There's probably more to come, but that's not bad at all. So René Rast, 129.803. He's the first one to get anywhere near that, but more times are going to start to roll through thicker and faster. The lap, as ever, divided into 3 sectors. The first sector takes the cars through the first turn at the Ravenel curve, down to turn 2, or turns 2, 3 and 4 if you take the exit into account, which is that run through Bernie Eccleston curve. And then coming out of that is where the first sector ends, just before you go into the Parabolica. And then from the Parabolica all the way down to the hairpin, out of the hairpin, up into the short straight at the back of the circuit, up into the entry into the Motordome just before you get there. That's sector 2, and the final sector takes in the final complex. So the entry into the Motordome, the left-hander at the Sats curve, and the final right-hander, which leads them back out then onto the start-finish straight. So that's how the sector times are divided up. René Rast is going quicker than he did in the previous lap, so he's done 2 absolute best sectors so far. Also looking like a decent lap, not quite as quick from Jamie Green. He's second at the moment, but the gap from first to second is actually about 3.5 seconds. That's going to come down though. But René Rast will set a new benchmark time, and that is the fastest time that we've had so far. 1 minute 29.314 seconds. So 129.314 seconds. Jamie Green gets into the 129s as well with a 129.725, and Robin Freins has just done a 1 minute 30.014. Now the best he managed this morning was a 130.956. The track seems, although the air temperature is a little bit cooler because we've had several sessions out on track with the support series as well, it seems to be that the track has gripped up a bit, even though the air temperature's dropped slightly. So that's a big improvement nonetheless for Robin Freins. Muller's gone quickest now though with a 129.218, and has just set the personal best through the first sector. Absolute best through the first sector though has gone to René Rast. So René Rast now with a 19.5 second first sector time, 19.561. That's actually only 5 thousandths quicker than Jamie Green's gone through there, and about a 10th quicker than Nico Muller went through that first sector. So the gap from first to second is just under a 10th of a second, 96th hundredths of a second. 129.2 for Muller, 129.3 for Rast, and a 129.7 for Green, third quickest. Van der Linde, 129.843, was fourth. He's down to fifth because Timo Glock just goes ahead of him with a 129.793, almost matching the time of Jamie Green. So Van der Linde down to fifth. Robin Freins currently in sixth place, but with a big gain in time. They've all gone quicker, but a much bigger gain in time for Robin Freins than he had endured this morning. So Muller is going to come through again. It's another pretty good lap, 129.406, a couple of tenths away from his best, but it's better than most of the others have done. 129.4, only Green and Rast and Muller, of course, himself have got under that. Now, Timo Glock, a 19.538 through the first sector. I mean, he's only a few hundreds quicker than anybody else through sector 1. It is the shortest sector. It's the next sector you've really got to nail. That's the longest sector of about 41 seconds. So you've got to get that right. But Timo Glock off to a good start to the lap nonetheless. Through goes Van der Linde, 129.951. And Sheldon stays in fifth place. Marco Wittmann with a personal best, 129.985, has gone up into sixth position. He was struggling with chronic understeer, he was saying on the team radio in the first part of free practice 1, was Marco Wittmann, and he also had a bit of a problem with the power delivery. Quite a lag between him hitting the accelerator and the power actually being delivered in a couple of places, but they seem to have sorted that out for the second part of free practice. Looking good now as well. Right, Timo Glock, absolute best in the first sector, personal best in the second. Just lost a tiny bit of time in the final sector. Overall, it's a better lap, but he stays fourth, 129.706. But he was within a few thousandths of his previous best. So 2 good laps for him. René Rast is just coming into the pits. You can see him in front of the commentary box. And Jamie Green, his teammate for Team Rosberg, the outgoing team's champions, in as well. Now, Loic de Waal on a pretty decent lap. Personal best through the first sector. He's currently in 8th place. His second sector time, though, was about half a second down on the very best times that we've seen. So he's just coming out of the Sachs curve, and now, as he backed off a bit, it looks like he might have, I think. Is he going to go into the pits or have another run at this, potentially? But, yeah, it just looked a little... He goes into the pit lane. Looks like he had just aborted that. I thought it was a pretty good start to the lap. So Loic comes into the pits. Harrison Newey stays out, and only at the moment in 15th place. Which is not where he wants to be, given that he was 8th earlier on. More and more cars coming into the pit. Sheldon van der Linde still out, but the time's starting to go away from him. Unless he's maybe doing something different here and having a slightly longer run than the others at the start of the session. So the top three are all in the pits: Muller, Green, and Rast. We've also got we've also got Wittmann into the pits. Freins, Duval, Auer, and Eng have all come into the pits. About half the cars in, half the cars left on track, including Timo Glock. And Timo keeps the speed going. It's not the absolute best that he's done, but it's not a bad lap. 129.797 for Timo. So that's only, what is it, 91 thousandths of a second away from what he did before. So pretty good effort that from Timo. Clearly able to do more than 1 or 2 quick laps in that car. There is Jonathan Aberdeen, fresh on the back of a season's best 4th place finish in the previous pair of back-to-back weekends at Zolder. Equaling his best so far in the DTM. At the moment, though, it's all about the Audis at the top of the field. The first 3 cars, all Audis. Muller, Green and Rast. Timo Glock is the best of the BMWs in 4th place. Van der Linde and Wittmann are up in the top 6 as well, though. So not a bad start to the session for BMW. And generally, race pace, they've been able to pretty close to matching the Audis. It's in the qualifying type trim that they've struggled, but they're not far away here. Timo Glock's best time, yes, it's half a second away from Muller, but he's 4th quickest overall. So cars now heading, most of them, either on the way into the pits or already there. And there's about 17 3/4 minutes to go. They won't be in the pits long because they want to get out as quickly as possible to do some longer runs. As you ride on board now then with a former Grand Prix winner, Robert Kubica. He's got to stay out, comes out of the final turn and fires the BMW out. This is not a bad lap from Robert. His best is a 1 minute 30.459. He's just gone a bit quicker, 1:30.454. So 14th quickest, but if you can find a couple of tenths of a second, he'd be up into the top 10. Great shot then, looking into the eyes of Robert Kubica. From a Grand Prix racer, multiple podium finisher, winner of the Canadian Grand Prix back in 2008, and a WRC2 world champion, the Polish driver. Riding here, fantastic watching him negotiate Parabolica. Great speed through there, I'll enjoy that. And out through the hairpin, and there's the sunlight glaring in this back straight as you go back up towards the arena at the end of sector 2. Definitely an issue. It's a pretty good first sector for Robert, 19.9 seconds. Best we've seen through there is 19.5. 19.6s and 7s for most of them. Through the second sector, 42.0. Again, losing about half a second there. So I'd say it's probably going to be about a second or so adrift of the best time, which is 1:29.2. He still could get close to his own best, which is a 1:30.454. He's certainly still attacking as he makes his way out of the Sachs curve on the way into the final turn. He's going to complete the lap. No, for the last second, he darts back into the pit lane. So it's pretty close to his personal best, though. So coming down the sequential gearbox now, slowing the car down to adhere to the pit lane speed limit, and that leaves us with a clear track. Actually, a couple of cars have just gone back out. So Muller's just gone back out, Rast has just gone back out, Glock, Freins and Duval, 1 or 2 cars coming out. So the longer runs in that first free practice session this morning, I did a bit of comparison of the times between our championship contenders. René Rast, Nico Muller and Robin Freins. Now, René and Nico both did 16 lap runs. Robin did a slightly shorter run of 14 laps. So what I've done is typed all those down into a spreadsheet, had a look at the best times and the worst times. I haven't taken their very last lap into consideration when they're kind of backing it off. So I've looked at the average, I've looked at the best lap, the worst lap, and then the drop-off between the best lap at the start of the session and the worst lap. So René Rast, his best lap time on the long run was a 92.118 seconds, so 1 minute 32.118 seconds. Nico Muller's was a 91.923, so Nico's absolute best on the long run was quicker, and he did a couple of high 91s as well. René never quite got into the 91s. 1 minute 32.118 was his best. 1 minute 31.923 was Nico's best. And then Robin Freins was up there at the start of the session. His second lap was a 92.084, so ever so slightly slower than Nico Muller, but ever so slightly quicker than René Rast. However, it's the average that you need to look at really on a long run, and how much the tyres seem to go off. So on his penultimate lap, René Rast did a 93.059, so that meant his times dropped by about 9/10 of a second from his best near the start of the session to his worst near the end of the session. So he lost 9/10 of a second on that long run. But Nico Muller lost more time. He lost nearly 1.2 seconds from his best lap, which was on lap 4, to his penultimate lap on lap 15, where he dropped down to a 93.1. And he'd actually, the lap before that, gone a bit slower than that with a 93.8. So Nico Muller, who is normally one that, of the three, seems to be able to keep his tyres going for slightly longer and in good condition for slightly longer, actually had a bit more tyre degradation, it seemed, in that first free practice run than René Rast, by about 0.3 of a second. Robin Freins was struggling big time. Now, Robin's quickest lap was lap 2. He got the quicker lap in earlier than the other two. Muller's was on lap 4, Rast was on lap 6 before he hit that absolute peak times. Robin's best time was a 92.084, which was good, but by the end of the session he was down into the 94s. He lost 2 seconds from his best lap to the end of the session. That's compared to 9/10 of a second for Rast and 1.2 seconds for Muller. So he had a huge amount of tyre degradation and drop-off, did Robin Freins, and he was really struggling for pace at the end of the session, which is probably why he called it a day early, and he did a couple of laps less than his two rivals. So the absolute pace is looking better for Robin, and it certainly looks better in this second free practice session. But he has got serious work to do in terms of looking after the tyres and getting the car. It's not just him, it's how the car is handling the tyre degradation here at Hockenheim, which can be quite high because of the high-speed corners that you've got at places like Parabolica, and also the sharp curves that you've got here as well, sharp-edged curves at Hockenheim. So Robin Freins on the back foot. You're riding with him now. We'll see how he gets on once the times start to come through on this slightly longer run now. I had a look at another two drivers who looked impressive to me, and they were Mike Rockenfeller, who was the absolute quickest in free practice 1, but he also had good long run pace, and Jamie Green, who looked like he was right up there as well. Now, Rocky's best time was a 92.7, and Jamie Green's best time on the long run was a 92.6, so they were right up there. Actually, Jamie Green was fractionally quicker than Nico Muller. Of the 5 drivers, Rast, Muller, Freins, Rockenfeller and Green, on the long run, Jamie Green set the best time with a 91.9, and he only lost about 7/10 of a second from the start to the end of the session. It was a bit shorter than the others. He did a couple of laps less, 14 laps, but his tyre degradation was minimal really, 7/10 of a second. So Jamie Green looking in good shape. His best lap on lap 2 was a 91.989. He was still doing 92.7s on the last proper lap that he did before he came in, whereas the others were all 93, or in Robin Freins' case, 94-second runs. And Mike Rockenfeller, 92.789, his best, his average. His drop-off was 1.2 seconds.
Mistake in the hairpin lap. Copy that. Gap to Duval behind you was 7 seconds, so should still be clear.
So a bit of a mistake in the hairpin, Nico Muller was saying, and we're about to get another look at that. Very easy to outbrake yourself there, and yeah, there's the look up. So he has to go deep into the corner, and actually over the white lines. If he tried to wrestle it into the corner, he would have risked a spin, so just slow the car down, keep it straight, then turn in. So that's messed the first sector up, and it won't do his tyres much good. He's got to explore the limits in this free practice session, because he's going to have to push them this weekend if he wants to take that 19-point gap down to a manageable level on René Rast going into Sunday. Everybody would want to be the championship leader coming into the final weekend of the season, but psychologically there is something to be said about the driver chasing, because you kind of only got one option really, that's to go for it, that's to close the gap, especially when it's a relatively big gap of 19 points or 41 points in the case of Robin Freins. Whereas if you are René Rast trying to defend your points lead, you kind of got in the back of your head that you don't need to take too many risks, you don't need to drive 100% all the time, and you just got to avoid drama and trouble. But that's when that starts to play into your mind, that becomes difficult. Then again, René Rast definitely knows how to handle that sort of thing, having already been a two-time DTM champion and a multiple Porsche Super Cup and Porsche Carrera Cup Germany champion as well. Pretty spectacular looking Jonathan Aberdeen. I noticed there's lots of sparks starting to fly from the cars as they go into the Sachs curve, and it looks pretty spectacular. Now the light is beginning to fade and the sun is starting to go down. It's that sort of orangey glow coming through the windscreen there over the visor of Nico Muller, showing that we're at the end of the afternoon. Right, so current lap times. Quickest driver out there right now is René Rast, 1 minute 31.519 seconds. But you've also got Robin Freins, who's just done a 131.641, tiny bit quicker than him. Loic Duval, 131.6 dead. And Jamie Green, not far off, 131.717. But Nico Muller is at the top of the times from the earlier part of the session, 131.567. He's up there as well. Rast is the quickest on that previous lap, but only by 0.5 of a second from Nico Muller. And Nico will be delighted to see his name at the top of a session, because it's been a while. Certainly not at Zolder. He didn't top any of the sessions there in either of the 2 weekends. So Nico Muller will be thrilled to see his name at the top of the times. It's unlikely that's going to be beaten now, given they're going for longer runs in the remaining part of free practice 2. But it's about getting the pace for the race as well. Right, Green's just gone through, another 131.6 for him, 131.688. Nico Muller is midway around the lap, watching him now wrestle the Team Ab Sportsline Audi. And there that sun getting lower and lower, and starting to get into the eyes of the drivers. Just about to tackle the Sachs curve, drops down the gears, turns in. It's a slight camber to the inside on that as well, so there's plenty of grip through there. Flat through the next kink. And then taking it into turn 16, turn 17 on the way out. It's a double apex right-hander to lead you back out. And what's the lap time going to be for Nico Muller as he crosses the line? It's a good one, 131.355. So he is now the quickest man out on track. 131.3 for him. Green did a 131.6. Rast had a slow lap last time around, 143.8. And then we've got a couple of others in the 131.7s. Marco Wittmann, who's getting better and better as the sessions go on. Loic Duval with a 131.7 as well. And looking further down the screen, because that's where he was in terms of single lap pace, Lucas Auer has just done a 131.397. He struggled big time with the car in free practice 1, but he is only bettered at the moment in this part of the session by Nico Muller, who's at the top of the times. So looking much better for the BMW driver, Lucas Auer, the Austrian. We stay on board with Nico Muller, sadly, going past these vast grandstands, which are all empty, I'm afraid, this weekend. As you well know, we're not able to have fans here on this DTM season, but we're glad we're able to bring you the coverage online and through the DTM grid, and of course through the television coverage. But we so look forward to the day we get fans back here, because it's an eerie feeling being at a big racetrack like this with really not many people here at all in terms of team personnel, non-drivers, non-engineers. There's a very limited amount of people that can be here, and it feels a lonely place. Much better. It brings it alive when the fans are here. So fingers crossed, everybody, we get you all back here next year. Right, Muller with another decent lap. It's a bit slower, but that's what you'd expect as the tyres start to degrade a little bit now. 131.637. Green, though, last time around did a 131.324, so he's going the other way. He sort of started a bit slow. He's getting quicker now. So Green looking really strong here. It's about the strongest Friday he's had, I would say, so far this season. 131.324 for him. Who else going well? Marco Wittmann again, 131.5. Third quickest on that, a lap behind Green, who did a 131.324, and Timo Glock, who did a 131.5 dead. René Rast, 131.9, is in the top 6 on that lap, but he's not absolute fastest, but I think he's building up a bit more, and I think he can get quicker on his next lap potentially. Through the first sector, Muller's done a 20.1, Green and Rast both did 20.2s, and Timo Glock did a 20.0. So Glock very good through the first sector, but as I say, it's that second sector, the longer sector, which incorporates the parabolica and the hairpin, that you really need to have the car underneath you to get a lap time in here at Hockenheim. Coming out of the final turn then with Nico Muller, the driver, second in the championship, looking to close this gap this weekend. And it'll start with qualifying tomorrow morning. 3 points available for pole position. If you can just steal the odd point here or there in qualifying on René Rast, it might just make a difference. Every point counts. He's got to keep himself up there. He's got to close that gap. He's got to be within 28 points just to have a mathematical chance at the end of Saturday. But he'll want to bring that gap down from 19 points. If you can get it down by 5 or 6 or 7 points over the course of the day, just gives him a chance. And one thing goes wrong for one of these drivers at one corner, one error, somebody else makes an error at one place, they outbrake themselves, they have a bit of bad luck with the timing of a safety car, one tiny component has an issue on the car, and there are thousands and thousands of them. It's all so finely balanced, and you just cannot, count your chickens in this until you've got across that line. You've got the points in the bag. Robin Freins, I think it's going to be fun to watch this weekend, because he really has got to go for it. He's got to go for the pole positions and wins if he's to have any chance. And Saturday's a big day for him, because if he's still 41 points behind at the end of Saturday, he's out of the running. So he's got to close that gap by a minimum of 13 points tomorrow. It's not going to be easy at all. The best way to do that is to try and get a win. And there's another lock-up, this time coming from Harrison Newey, who had a good first free practice session, but he's off the pace a bit in this second free practice session, seemingly struggling with the car to get it slowed down. Right, there are only a couple of drivers still managing 1 minute 31 times. One of them is Timo Glock, 131.6. The other is Marco Wittmann, 131.835. So this is turning into a good session for the leading lights of BMW here in terms of the long run pace. And actually, short run pace was good as well. 4th, 5th and 6th BMWs at the first part of the session. There's another lock up ahead. Ooh. The Audi of Newey, Robin Freins making his way through just behind, trying to close that gap. Sparks flying, light fading all the time. And on board with Robin as he pushes up towards 280 kilometres an hour, not quite getting there, at 270 before he gets on the brakes, closes up under braking as he comes out of the hairpin and gets onto the tail almost of Harrison Newey here, although not quite close enough to find a way past. Maybe not quite being delayed yet, but Robin Freins' last lap was a 133.040. His rivals are in the, well, we're in the 131s and low 132s, so he's still struggling. Harrison Newey struggling with understeer again, going way out wide and using a bit too much of the circuit there. There are still like an endless screen of messages coming up on race control, and they all say the same thing. It's copy and paste. They all say failed to manage track limits at turn 1. I'm not kidding you, there are about 15 messages and that's only on the bit of the screen that we can see. That's not all of the messages, and it's pretty much every driver failing to manage track limits at turn 1. They have to be careful because they're all being kept an eye upon here, and you know, penalties can be applied, lap times can be taken away, so they've got to be careful. But they're all pushing the boundaries a bit too much on the exit to turn 1, which is always the key culprit in terms of where that's going to happen. Right, the session has ticked down to 0. The checkered flag has been unfurled, and the session is about to come to an end. Jamie Green into the pits after a very good day, only topped in that session by Nico Muller, and only 80 thousandths of a second between the two drivers. René Rast third with a 129.3. In terms of short run pace, those three really stood out, because then there's about a 0.4 of a second gap back to Timo Glock in 4th, half a second back to Van der Linde in 5th, and more than half a second to Wittmann and Rockenfeller 6th and 7th. Tyres now changed, cars released back out because they're going to go back onto the grid for some practice starts. And the cameras always light it up a bit, but rest assured, here at the circuit, it's starting to feel a little bit dusk-like. I mean, in the commentary box, it's almost dark now. Everything, screens are lighting up, but it is much darker than it looks on your TV pictures there. You get a bit of a sense of it for the wide shot with the lights on the cars, but it's starting to feel like an endurance race now. That sort of phase where you're about to go into the evening. As I say, this is the latest that they're going to run. Practice pit stops as well. It's not just about getting the cars out onto the grid for practice starts. That's their opportunity to have a real-life practice of getting the tyre changes done as well. They look to get as close to 6 seconds as they possibly can. It's going to continue to be a feature, the mandatory pit stop of the new format of DTM next year. 6 mechanics will be the limits. That'll be reduced. 2 wheel guns is still going to be the case. It's currently 9 that you can have working on the car at a pit stop, one of them being a wheel catcher. 8 with a properly active role. That's going to be reduced for next year. It's still going to be 55-minute plus 1 lap races. We're going to have the introduction of success ballast. At the end of each race, the top 3 will carry success ballast into the next. So it will be 25 kilograms if you win a race, 18 kilograms if you're second, 15 kilograms if you're third, which, bearing in mind thousandths of a second can make the difference, is going to have quite the effect, I think. There'll be a balance of performance as well, which won't just look at the size of the engines, the capacity of the engines, and the performance of the engines and power, but look at other elements as well. So Nico Muller will sleep well tonight. He's gone and put himself at the top of the times in free practice 2, 129.218 seconds. Long run pace was good as well. Jamie Green, good day for him as well, 129.298, second fastest in that free practice. He was 4th in the other session earlier on. René Rast up there again, as he always is, 3rd place. Timo Glock 4th, he's looked strong today. Sheldon van der Linde, much stronger, free practice 2, 5th place. Marco Wittmann, whatever gremlins he was suffering with understeer and power delivery at the start of free practice 1, well and truly sorted out now. 6th place, good to see him back up there. 7th, Mike Rockenfeller. 8th, Robin Freins. He, of the 3 championship contenders, the one that has struggled the most today. Loic Daval, 9th. Ferdinand Habsburg was 10th. Fabio Scherer was 11th. Lucas Auer, 12th. Jonathan Aberdeen, 13th. Robert Kubica was 14th. Philip Enger struggled today. He was 15th. And Harrison Newey, who went well in free practice 1, struggled a bit with the car in that one, so he was 16th. So looking very good for Nico Muller. He had a good first free practice. He's had an excellent second free practice session, and he is still in the game here. Remember, he was the driver up until that second weekend at Zolder that led the championship from the word go, really, from the end of the first race at Spa, and he's not going to give this one up easily. He's already been a runner-up in the championship. He's not going to be doing that again. Wins could come into this as well, because if there is a tie in points, you're going to look at count back of results. So he's 1 behind in race wins. René Rast has had 6 wins this season now, including the last 4 on the bounce, and Nico Muller has had 5 wins. You have to go back to the second race at the Nürburgring 3 meetings ago since his last race win. Had 11 podium finishes each. In terms of second place finishes, should it go back to that, Muller's had 3. And René Rast has had 3, and third place finishes, Muller has had 3 and Rast has had 2. So again, if it were to tie on points at any stage, as we see Robin Freins and Fabio Scherer get off the line, then yeah, that could all come into play. And that's all pretty tight as well, because in truth, once again, they've been very evenly matched, even more so, those two drivers, than they were last year. Rast beat Muller to the title last year. He's ahead coming into this final weekend, but Nico Muller has proven that he is a fighter and he is not going to give this one up easily. So Muller topping the times in free practice 2, ahead of his rival. Only just less than 1/10 of a second, but psychologically that will do him the world of good, and he'll also be pleased, I think, with his race pace, which is generally always very good anyway. Even at Zolder, where he struggled a little bit, that was never really an issue, the race pace, but qualifying is going to be so big tomorrow. Going to get a couple of runs at it and that's it. You've got to, from Nico Muller's point of view, he's really got to be looking for pole position for the points that gives as well. So Robert Kubica looks like he's the last one away, as I think we've probably got about another 15-20 minutes of daylight here and it's going to be properly dark. So a new style this of winter racing. René Rast then up there again, 3rd fastest. He was 2nd fastest in the first free practice session. Jamie Green, an excellent day. Good to see him back on form. The British driver was 4th in free practice 1. He was 2nd quickest in this afternoon session though, and he was only, as you can see, 80 thousandths of a second adrift of the driver that tops the times, Nico Muller. This is just the tonic he needed after Zolder. He's had a good run here. He's been a winner here at Hockenheim before. His record isn't quite as good as René Rast, but history is history. It's all about this weekend. Nico Muller ends Friday at the very top of the times with the quickest time of the weekend so far. And before we go, a reminder of how it stands coming into this all-important weekend. René Rast, 304 points, 19 clear of Nico Muller. Robin Freins, 41 adrift, can still win the championship, but he needs an excellent day tomorrow, and he needs to follow it with another excellent day on Sunday. That's the way it's all poised. That's the way it is all set up for this final weekend here at Hockenheim. We'll bring you coverage of qualifying and the races, of course, over the course of the weekend. At the start time for the first qualifying session tomorrow is 10:30 local time. We'll be on air about 5 minutes before that to bring you all of the build-up. From everybody here at Hockenheim and me, Chris Hartley, thanks for watching.